But we're live now.
Oh, we are. Hey, welcome everybody to episode 43 of the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, also the chair of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and co-chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who just surprised me by putting us online while I was trying to prep actually for the episode. That's okay. He's already starting the episode off by busting my balls, which is what I love about him. Also, you know, Michael is the host of his own show, The Rational Egoist, which you should be watching. Michael, do you have any new guests or new programs out that you'd like to?
Wonderful episode out today, all about logic with Jim Valliant. Definitely, people should be tuning into that. I will include a link to that with this when it's over. So if anybody wants to find it, just go to this episode and you'll find the link.
Folks, we can't have too much logic today. And in today's day and age, ruled by emotionalism, I think we should start understanding what tools we need to think properly so that we can navigate the world better than emotionalists like Trump are able to navigate the world. And he will be a subject of quite a bit of the things we talk about today. Unfortunately, he seems to make the news more than any other human being on the face of the earth. Usually that news for liberty-minded people is not good. So we're just going to touch on some of those things today. The first thing I wanted to touch on, it's also Q&A day, so make sure you bring your
Well, that's the thing.
Yes. Are there any Q&As?
We've already got a, do either of you know who Italo Calvino is? And as a matter of fact, I do. He was an Italian journalist who died in 1985.
Wow. Well, how do you know that? Come on, get out. You just looked it up.
Google.
Well, what about him? What about this guy?
I don't know. I don't know why this is here. I don't. You got to ask Alan Thomas. I mean,
Alex, tell us why you are throwing esoteric questions at us, because I want to know. I want to expand my base of knowledge. And while you're doing that, Alex, I'm going to get to Jonah Goldberg's tweet. Was it today, or was this tweet yesterday that you sent me? It's yesterday, yeah.
I think I sent it today.
Okay, it was. He said, as foretold, Trump is eating the conservative legal movement last. Well, I actually tweeted on top of this after I read his Truth Social post and said, in the New Yorker, I was interviewed by the New Yorker, by the way, with a group of quote unquote conservatives in Hollywood. I said, I'm not a conservative, I'm liberal, but you can include me with these folks. They were all Trumpsters. I said, I predict, this was 2015-16, just when he was running, that Trump will ruin the Republican Party. Not that they weren't already on the road to perdition years and years and years before that, but I predicted that he would destroy the Republican Party, which he essentially has. They've now gone from a party that conserved classical liberalism to the party that is now nationalistic, xenophobic, mercantilist, and now trying to expand executive power to the extent that we no longer can recognize the president as the president, but more like some form of aristocratic person, like a king or an emperor. It seems like that seems to be Trump's vibe. Now, he goes on a rant about the decision by the International Court of Trade. Well, we'll go with that. By that body to suspend Trump's tariffs, there was an appeal that was mostly an administrative appeal, which means it's just on hold while they litigate things for a couple of weeks. I think that the legal reasoning on the side of the International Court of Trade is very good. I think there's another appellate court that's also in D.C. that also has issued an opinion about this, that is the reasoning is very sound, that could set a precedent that could hobble presidential power, or should I say not hobble presidential power, actually keep it in line with the Constitution. This rant on Truth Social, I could be summed up in just a few words. There's an entire thick paragraph here of rationalizations for why Trump should be able to do what he wants to do. But that's essentially what it means. I'm the president. I should be able to do whatever I want to do. My interests are the interests of the country. Literally, he's saying that throughout this entire rant. Could you post that? Is there any way we could? I mean, I think I retweeted it on.
I did too.
So people should be able to read this rant and see that it essentially says, "Hey, what I hold as the interests are the interests of the American people, and what I want to do are in the interest of the American people because I claim they are, and I shouldn't have to be limited by crazy things like the Constitution of the United States and the legislative body of the United States. This is just absurd." What do you say to this, Michael? I mean,
I'm going to retweet this right now. I got to find it first, and then I'm going to retweet it, and people can read it for themselves. But I have to find it first. I do an awful lot, way too much tweeting. It appears from looking at my phone here. But what I'm interested in knowing too is, do we have evidence of your claim that you predicted the demise of the Republican Party in 2018, or is this just something you're claiming now? That's what I really need to know.
Yes, you do. It's in the New Yorker article that was written in 2016. You can probably find it there. It has to do with conservatives in Hollywood waxing insanely about the impending Trump win. And I was the lone person in the group that said, I think this is actually not a good thing. I think that Trump will probably ruin the Republican Party, and all of his actions in the past 130 days have not proven me wrong. I think the Republican Party is on the way out, ready to be replaced, I think, by a better party that actually does hold classical liberal values. That party is called the American Capitalist Party, folks, where we actually stick to the Constitution, the separation of powers, the deconcentration of political power, so that you, the people, have total moral agency over your own life. And if you think that sounds preferable to a Trump emperorship, I encourage you to go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org, donate, and start being the change now. This is a grassroots movement. We've already got our beloved candidate, Alan Thomas, who's up for city council and will win in Argo, I have to say, and bring capitalist notions to the South where they are desperately needed. Yes, sir.
He's kind of breaking my balls here, though, in the comments. So I don't know if we're going to call him beloved, at least not for today. Maybe he said my answer was terrible. I Googled it on the fly. Blame Google, not me. But back to this Trumper that we got, the Donald, there's two things. One is, yes, it's absolutely true that he just gets mad when he doesn't get his way, like a petulant child. Every single time he just throws a tantrum. But there's also something else in here, is he's blaming the Federalist Society because they're the ones who recommended the picks. Now, here's the thing. When does Donald take responsibility for anything, right? Who did somebody make him go to the Federalist Society? Did he not look them up ahead of time? I don't know, but he assured us all that he was going to pick the best people. He knew what he was doing. But whenever something falls apart, he was tricked. He was blamed. It was the people in his cabinet. They're liars. They're this, they're that.
Michael, then he can fall back on something that the American people consider a virtue, and that is that he is a outsider in D.C.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So he's playing the outsider card, and that's why he made the errors that he did. Well, the Federalist Society certainly has a better idea of which judges are going to protect liberty and actually abide by the Constitution. And that's what makes him mad, because it's not convenient now.
Yeah. If nothing else deterred me from liking Trump, his propensity to never own up to anything is enough for me to dislike him. Not just as a president, but I mean fundamentally as a person. Nicole Hingle says, do politicians ever accept blame? They tend to push it off, but I've never seen anything like this. I mean, and what Nicole's comment is very important to me, because this is where Trump kind of, I think, gets away with things, because people say, well, all politicians do this. Okay, but we have Donald Trump going back at least, well, no, even to the USFL, he was blaming people. It's always it's rigged against him. The Emmys were rigged against him. The various what do they call primaries were rigged against him when he didn't win. It's just repulsive that this guy does this, and that he has a merry band of sycophants ready to carry water for him to back him up. It's a serious, serious issue, and I can guarantee you that no candidate for the American Capitalist Party will ever be doing that, because if that candidate did such a thing, that candidate wouldn't be a candidate for very long.
Alan Thomas says, rightfully so. The bankruptcy courts are rigged against him. That's why he went bankrupt 22 some odd times. They do have it in for him. Unfortunately, the political climate is such that people witnessed lawfare against the guy to such a degree that he can now hang his hat on these kinds of conspiracies. And lots of people are going to be dragged along in that belief that, yeah, this system really is sort of against Trump, even though Trump is his own worst enemy 99.9% of the time. Because you have the Letitia Jameses of the world running on the fact that she's just going to get him. That was it was pure political gamemanship on her part. So that's how he's able to. One thing Trump has a talent for, I think Yaron Brook might have mentioned this after the first assassination attempt, how he put his fist in the air with blood trickling down his face, and the American flag waving in the background, and all of the Secret Service agents around him. It was a perfect photo op. It made every magazine on the planet. He has a sense for the dramatic. He has a sense for tapping into the base emotions of people and using that to his advantage. And he's certainly doing that now by claiming that anyone who acts against what he wants to do for America is acting against the interests of the American people. Now, this is just tyranny 101. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you hear tyrants say. Now, that's a huge word that I hate to use, because it's been overused, especially with Trump over the last 8 years. They've called him a Nazi, and people haven't been able to make the connection. They've equated him with Hitler, and they have all kinds of other hysterical claims and predictions that have numbed people like me to the real possibility that this guy is a danger. Well, this tweet demonstrates a dangerous mind operating in the White House right now, who's seeking a dangerous amount of power over the American people. No, the executive is limited by the Constitution and has no more powers than are expressly written in the Constitution. That doesn't make him the king. That doesn't make his whims the king. He is subject to oversight by the legislature and the judiciary, and as a participating member of a constitutional republic, he should abide by that. That's what every good Republican should and would do. So this doesn't bode well. And in addition to that, I mean, you gave me another article about.
We got a question to get to. You can't avoid the people. We can't ignore the people.
The last people I want to avoid are the people.
And the thing is, we already have a viewer to like deficit that we need to rectify, and we're not going to do that if we just ignore it.
Why is this always happening?
I don't know. I forget to like my own stuff, so I'm not going to blame anyone. But Nicole Hingle, question for today is: what are your thoughts on Democrats spending $20 million to learn how to talk to men in an effort to get back the young men they have lost? Well, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I remember when Al Gore was running for president, and he was going to have, I think it was Naomi Wolf was going to teach him how to be an alpha male. We go back, remember Dukakis? He was on the tank with the
and
helmet.
That became an absurd photo op that haunted
and then I remember John Kerry acting like he was going hunting. It's just, this is just silly things that politicians do. It's dumb. But the problem is, a lot of the times, like, we notice it when it's absurd, right? Like how to talk to men. It's like, oh my goodness. But this is what politicians do, right? They learn. I mean, Bill Clinton with the triangulation, they learn how to tailor their message to reach the most amount of people. It's all about bullshitting people rather than actually offering solutions for people. And
I can save the Democratic Party $20 million right now. Do you want me to do that?
sure.
Okay. Here's how you talk to men. Don't condescend to them. Don't claim that they're evil by nature. Don't assassinate masculinity. Don't say that testosterone is evil, or believe that testosterone-driven behavior by men is evil, or that males are by nature aggressive, harmful, evil, and the people responsible for every calamity on the face of the earth, including global warming. How about if you stop doing that? If you simply stop doing that, you'll engage a lot more men who are interested in bodily autonomy, which is the only thing the Democrats have going for them, because they think your body's free, but your property is everybody else's. So you could also stand to understand that property is the means by which people exercise their individual rights to life, and maybe loosen up your perspective with respect to property. And when you have bodily autonomy and property autonomy, you're going to score a lot more points with folks, Democrats, and then you can sort of get back in alignment with old Thomas Jefferson, who you lost many years ago. So I just saved them $20 million. They don't have to spend that. Okay.
I have a question for you, Mark, and it's a bit of a statement, and then I want to get to Robert Nasser's question too. So, good point. Greg Lewis says, we're not helping Democrats with your statement, Mark, but we're giving an argument to join the American Capitalist Party. Yes. Absolutely. So, in talking about what they're trying to do is they want to learn to tailor their message, learn how to talk to men, whatever. And politicians do this. They won't answer questions. They deflect. It's all about tricking people, basically. It's about having an image. Rather than solve problems, you're going to talk a certain way. You're going to be great. Now, Donald Trump kind of went against that traditional mold. And I think that he gives off the air of authenticity when he's really not authentic. He lies constantly, but people think like he's direct, and some people respect that. Now, you're familiar with the TV show House, right?
Yeah.
I love House, my favorite show of all time. I'm going through all the episodes again for the umpteenth time, but the premise of the show, the question that they ask is, do you want a doctor with good bedside manner, or do you want a doctor that's actually going to cure you? For me, I don't care if my doctor's an asshole. I would prefer to have a nice doctor that also cures me, but if I'm given the choice, I want the doctor that cures me. My best friend, Brent McCall, he's a very blunt speaker. He doesn't bullshit. He doesn't beat around the bush, but his character is rock solid. So I really don't care that he, doesn't tiptoe around my feelings, right? Do you think that it's a problem that so many people would prefer the nice doctor or the nice waiter? You go to a restaurant and you want to have everybody be nice as opposed to having the good food. Because like I said, I would like both, but if I go to a restaurant, I'd much prefer to have a dickhead waiter and a dickhead chef and have a great steak. What do you think about this?
Well, I'm a little bit torn on that. The way you described that last part, because the eating experience is a holistic experience. It's a full sensory experience, and part of that experience is the service. So you can't. I don't think that's necessarily an analogy that measures up. I think what makes people think that Trump is he's just clear spoken, that he just says what he thinks. They're confusing his boorishness and brashness and impulsivity with some kind of honesty, because they what they see out there in the world is what the Democrats are trying to give us with their $20 million investment. Prepackaged stuff. It's legalese. It's been sorted out long in advance with focus groups, and they figured out, through polling and stuff, what is going to jibe with the most people out there. And so they're prepackaged and so artificial that they like spontaneous and off the cuff, and they're confusing that with honesty, which Trump is not. There's a difference between boorishness and brashness and clarity of thought and even somebody who's laconic, doesn't say much, but when he talks, it's meaningful. and truthful, honest discourse. Now, Trump doesn't engage in truthful, honest discourse. He's completely self-aggrandizing. All he does is build his brand. And I get the sense over time that that's why he's in the presidency, given the fact that he seems to be he's huckstering so many Trump brand products. I feel like he's just making an investment in his own wealth later on down the road, and the presidency is just a means to that end. It's a means to upping the Trump brand as opposed to actually helping the American people, which he doesn't seem too open to do. So I would prefer, like you, the politician who said it like it was, who says it like it is, who will always tell the truth, and they're going to tell the truth. And that also means that they're going to say, I fucked up. I apologize. I was in error, and I now have to go back and correct that error. Because people who can't admit error, especially in the political realm, when they have so much power in their hands, cannot course correct. And the great thing about a free country, folks, that one of the great things that we have over every other country that's authoritarian is our flexibility, our ability to adjust and correct course. So whenever anybody talks about, the horrors that America has perpetrated in the world and in its own country, I said, yes, we've also been the only country to course correct, to acknowledge those problems, and then to go about attempting to make a better future. And only free societies can do that, and only people can do that who acknowledge that they're wrong.
So let me tell you something. This is good. This is going to be a very personal thing here. My friend Subby is listening. Let me just give you some background. I've told you before, this guy's the nicest guy in the world, right? But he's obsessed with this, saying hi to everybody. And the thing is, if somebody walked by me and didn't say hello, it wouldn't even register in my head. I wouldn't, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like if I'm sitting down in a chair in a house and somebody walks into the house and walks by me, I don't even think about it. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I couldn't care less. But Subby will go sick. Like, oh my God, they didn't say hi. You got to say hi. And sometimes I'll forget to say hi, and then I'm in trouble. Oh, you didn't say hi, So Subby says here about the restaurant, well, the dickhead might spit in your food. Yeah. And so might the Eddie Haskell, right? So might the guy who's smiling and so nice to you, to your face, can spit in your food. I mean, that can happen either way. Just because somebody puts on a nice demeanor doesn't actually mean they're a nice person, especially if we go back to what we were talking about here, is we're talking about politicians who ultimately are full of shit, right? I mean, they're just not honest people.
I got to tell you, in Hollywood is full of those kinds of folks. I just saw a documentary on the cat that played the lead in Seventh Heaven. That was a series. It was a Aaron Spelling series. It went for about 7 seasons or so, maybe even longer. It was one of the most popular series on the WB, eventually the CW. And this guy was a combination, like all leads in TV shows. You have to be it's a combination of actor and politician, because you're out there, you're pitching your show for people. You go to you go to this the television critics conference, and you have to sit up there with a bunch of television critics, and you have to present your show to them, and you have to be more or less a diplomatic stand-in. And this guy was perfect for all that. But the show that they were featuring him on was called Hollywood Monsters, because underneath it all, he was a pedophile who had done terrible, terrible things to children. While the entire time he was working on the show and building up quite a bit of cred as a very good actor in general. Now he's persona non grata, because all of it came out in the open when his wife taped a therapy session between the two of them and their therapist as their marriage was crumbling, and he admitted all this stuff on tape, and so there was no way he could get around it. But yes, there's lots of people that have perfected the packaging that leads you to believe that they're a good person. I'm thinking of one person in particular. I won't say who that is. And the general public thinks, that they're an angel incarnate. That's not necessarily the case. While I get the bad rap, even though I will tell you exactly what I think
We got to have a guessing contest, please, ladies and gentlemen. Try to figure out who.
Don't do it. Don't do it. So yes, I know where the bodies are buried, folks. I know where the bodies
Don't do it. Don't take my advice. I've been shut down. The great Mark Pellegrino said, "No way, we're doing that."
Look, I tell you that this is definitely a problem. People fall for the packaging. They don't look what's inside the package, and they don't investigate what's inside the package. And part of that has always been the case with people, but I think it's been more the case now that people are so intellectually shallow. Now that we've thrown reason aside and we make emotions our tools of cognition, the shiny packages just make us feel better. It doesn't matter what's going on inside, and it should be the reverse. Even if the package on the outside looks a little beat up and worn, maybe the inside has a great deal of strength and integrity. Then that's the thing, the qualities that are going to see us through.
We have a question here from Inna KR. It says, question, immigration system in Canada is our source of pride, but as a result, one would unlikely find a modest detached house for less than $600,000 as people enter faster than houses are being built. Thoughts? Well, I don't know much about the Canada housing market, so I can't answer directly about Canada, but I will say this. Yes, all things remaining equal, if you put more people in the market to buy, prices are going to rise. But if Canada is anything like America, in America, the zoning laws are a great impediment to building new houses. So in most cases, if you had an influx of other people would build houses to meet the demand. But when you have laws against building, then yes, the price is going to go up. I don't know, but my bet is in Canada, it's a similar situation. You probably have to jump through numerous hoops in order to build. So
Canada is the birthplace of Greenpeace, so that should tell you.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical. I think it's easy to just say, look, immigrants are driving housing costs. And I'm not denying that, like I said, if you have more buyers in the market, yeah, the price is going to go up. But I would be willing to bet that there's things within the Canadian regulatory market that is preventing houses from being built to match that demand. What do you think, Mark?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, Canada has about 1/10 of the population of the United States of America, and quite a bit of land mass, maybe even more than the United States of America, that's not being filled up, and could be if construction were allowed. I know there's other issues in some provinces like British Columbia and Vancouver in particular, where Chinese interests actually buy up real estate, then they build on the real estate, and then they just hold it. They just let it sit there, and they prevent it from going onto the market to intentionally make the prices rise. But I'm sure there are all kinds of building constrictions in Canada that, because they're interested in preserving their land over preserving human, I hate to say this, but human life and making human life better. So it's not the immigrants that are causing the problem necessarily, unless they're bringing in some kind of toxic ideology that isn't being countered. And that toxic ideology is actually taking hold and getting political power in your parliament and parliamentary system. Then I have grave doubts about whether the immigration system itself is causing issues, or letting people in is causing the price issues.
Now, Robert Naser asked a great question, and I have to go back and find it. I'm really interested to get your take on this, Mark. So I'm going to let you actually answer before I do. Robert Naser says, do we really get the government we deserve?
Yes, I saw that question. I thought that was a great question. I'm going to answer, because I don't think he answered in the affirmative. But I'm going to answer in the affirmative. Yes, we do. We do vote these politicians in, and if we're fooled by the bells and whistles, or if we simply think that the government's place in the world is to redistribute wealth and to foment equality of outcomes, then bad on us for not understanding what the nature of government is. And so we deserve to feel the impact of those policies. And hopefully the impact of the policies presents enough of a contrast for people who think they're pursuing a moral ideal to make them question their premises and say, well, perhaps my moral ideal needs to be in question now, and perhaps the government can't do these things that I thought they could do initially. And now maybe I should think about another role for government, the role that the American Capitalist Party understands the government to be in, which is as a protector of individual rights merely. Police, law courts, and army are all you need the government to do for you. That means they protect your life and property from foreign invasion and from domestic criminals. That's it. The rest of it is up to us, folks. It's up to us.
The only issue I would take with the question is the we part. Now, I get it. If you're saying Americans as a whole, does the majority get the government that they deserve? And I would say yes. Ultimately, you do, because it's up to the people to study these issues, to learn about them, to study their politicians. And people have decided that they want a welfare state. But not everybody has decided that, right? Not everybody has decided we want the war on drugs. Not everyone's decided that we want, regulations here, regulations there, zoning laws, that sort of thing. Very, extensive redistribution of wealth. So in that sense, the answer is ultimately yes and no from my perspective, because it's yes if you're thinking of Americans as a whole, but I'm very skeptical to do that because I'm an individualist, right? And I don't want to cast aspersions on people who are fighting their whole lives for freedom and don't get it because the majority just doesn't want to give them up. Have I personally ever gotten the government I deserve? Well, I might not be the best person to ask, because the answer is yeah. For me, I ended up in prison and I certainly deserve to be there. So in that case, yeah, I got the government I deserved.
I think when we're talking about generalizations, though, we do X out the particulars. Do I think objectivists get the government they deserve? No. Because except the Trumpsters, those people who were objectivists who voted for Trump, thinking he was the best alternative, you got the government you deserved. Sorry, you did. I didn't vote for Trump. I never have voted for Trump. In this last election, I actually abstained from voting in the presidential part of the election. I voted for local officials and local propositions. I abstained from the presidential election because there was absolutely no candidate I could choose, not even on the libertarian side, that I thought even remotely represented the things that I think are appropriate for the government. So I abstained, and unfortunately, that's a difficult thing, because when you abstain, you are in. If there were a none of the above vote, that would be fantastic. Then you could participate in a negative check against the candidates that they have in power, and they could then use that as a gauge to, well, my messaging isn't working. Both sides could then say my message isn't working. When you abstain, it's almost as if you're washing your hands of the political process and then taking your citizen to the power of your citizenship to influence the political messaging and the political direction of the country and throwing it away. I don't like doing that, especially today, in today's world where politics actually matter in your life when they shouldn't. But I had to this time around because there was simply nobody who represents my perspective. So we have to go back and answer some of WZ's questions.
I was on it. I was just looking at it.
Go, baby.
All right. So WZ says the government's role is to promote the flourishing of its citizenry. He says that can mean any number of things, to which Greg Lewis replied, WZ, the government's role is to identify and uphold individual rights. And then WZ responds, where do you get that government's role is only the protection of individual rights? Okay, so there's two ways to answer this question. One is, what is the proper role of government? And that is a deep philosophical question where you have to answer ethical questions, tie them to politics, figure out that the only just role for government is the protection of individual rights. But while that would be a long answer, in America, the answer is quite simply. The founding fathers were very much influenced by John Locke. John Locke's second treatise of government talks about that the only purpose of government proper is to protect individual rights. The Declaration of Independence talks about the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. We also have the Bill of Rights. We've got many, many writings of the founding fathers that the purpose of government is to protect the liberty of the people. So in America, we get the idea that the purpose of government is to protect rights from our founding documents. But philosophically, we can understand that as it's wrong for any one man to initiate force against another, so it's wrong for any group, including a government, to initiate such force. And while it's perfectly fine or perfectly moral for a person to defend himself, it's also perfectly moral for a group of people to get together for the purposes of self-defense. And ultimately, that's what government, in the moral sense, should be doing. Mark, if you'd like to piggyback, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think what defines civilization is the mitigation of violence. You'll find over the past few millennia, as we go through intellectual developments and became more progressive as a people. I'm talking about humankind in general. The tendency has been towards mitigating violence, and we understood that the government was a means of mitigating violence, whereas before, the state sort of functioned as an independent apparatus that went after its own. It protected the aristocracy at the expense of everybody else. We understood that was an improper role of government. The role of government is actually to mitigate violence. That's why we delegate force to the government. We understand the government is a gun. Is the government gun best used pointed at its own citizens or at the criminals who are trying to rob the citizens? Is human thriving better served by pointing guns at people and taking their stuff, or by pointing the guns at the people who are doing that? Is human thriving better served by the government pointing its guns at rogue states that are trying to also take our stuff and kill us, or by pointing them at the citizens themselves to create some abstract notion of equity? I think they're better served pointing the guns at the criminals and at the rogue states that want to harm us in some way. That way, we mitigate violence. And I think human civilization and human thriving is best served by delegating force to a process called due process, where we subordinate force to reason. And we subordinate society to moral law. That's what rights are. And so that, to me, is how you contribute to human thriving, by leaving human beings free to pursue their own values. And you do that by eliminating force from interpersonal relationships, delegating it to the government, who can only react in a retaliatory way. And in that way, you protect human rights. And that is the sole purpose of the government.
We have a great little debate happening here in the comments. This WZ says, why are we so averse to violence? He says freedom is only available to those capable of violence. Well, there's a big difference between offensive violence and defensive violence. Yes, a people that will not defend, even with violence, their freedom shall not remain free for long. That's true. But that doesn't mean that we have to go around initiating violence against other people. And the fact that we will not do so does not mean we will become slaves. And I think Akira Felix, it was Deeper with Diego, says, wow, it's a good thing the founding fathers thought of the Second Amendment. So I think that is a good answer, because defensive violence is appropriate. That's what rights ultimately boil down to, is the right of self-defense if somebody uses force against me. Akira Felix wants to know, what differences of constitutional interpretation do you have? I don't know, because I don't know Mark's theory of the Constitution, so that would be very, very difficult for me to answer. I can tell you what my method of interpretation is, and I'm certainly not a constitutional scholar, but I follow Randy Barnett on this. I think that the Constitution ought to be interpreted according to the commonly accepted meaning of the terms used at the time it was ratified. That doesn't just mean in the founding generation. That means each amendment that you're going to interpret should be interpreted according to how the people who understood it at the time. The reason is for a couple things. One, because the people that ratified it understood it to mean a certain thing. And I don't think we can just rip it out of that context and apply to it whatever we want. But also, by doing so, we understand the rules of the game. And if you don't understand the rules of the game, like if I showed up to your house to play poker and all, you know, and we all agreed to certain rules, and all of a sudden you throw down, you know, a pair of twos and say, no, twos are wild. You've now changed the game, and nobody could play like that. You can't function like that. And I think it's the same thing with the Constitution.
I certainly agree with the strict interpretation of the Constitution in the language as it was meant at the time, which requires a great deal of work for a jurist. I don't know how many folks are willing to put in that kind of work, but I also agree with James Valliant that there needs to be amendments that to tighten the loopholes that enable collectivists and states to take control of power. There needs to be the repeal of certain amendments. There needs to be a tightening of legal language so that there's no way in which the politicians can subvert the Constitution and take any more powers than are explicitly granted to them. WZ says, I just agree with objectivism and libertarianism on moral grounds. Well, I hope you're not conflating the two, because they're very different. And we disagree with libertarianism on moral grounds as well.
That comes up. No, he says, I disagree with them both. And he already addressed the idea that he's conflating. He says, I'm not. I just disagree with both of them, which of course is his right to do so because freedom of speech.
That's right. He's allowed to do that. And I wanted to piggyback off of this. What is our aversion to violence? Well, our understanding is that human beings can't really pursue values in a state of persistent violence. So I can't go for what I think are my rational self-interests when somebody's pointing a gun to my head and telling me that I have to do something else for some other interests that the collective has considered to be more cogent than mine, and something that I need to subordinate my own values for. So that's why we're against initiated violence and a state of perpetual violence, which is essentially what we have in a mixed economy. But I am all for vigorous retaliatory violence. Michael knows me. And if you attack me, if you come into my house, you want to take my shit or hurt my people. If you ever saw The Bronx Tale, there's a scene where some Hells Angels come into the guy's bar. They're not dressed right. The bartender says they have to leave for their dress code. Chaz Palminteri, the gangster of the neighborhood, he says he lets them stay because they're like, we're servicemen. We served in the army. You know, we love our country. He's like, spoken like a true gentleman. Have a beer. Stay here. So they of course, they do some shitty thing and they fuck up the bar a little bit. And Chaz walks up to me and says, now he's got to leave. And they don't leave. So he goes over and he locks the door. He locks the door to the bar so they can't get out. And he goes, now you just can't leave. And right there, all the hoods come out from behind the bar and they just beat the living crap out of these guys and make an example of them. So you break into my house, you're leaving on my terms, pal. You're not leaving on your own terms anymore if you're walking out of there. I believe in vigorous self-defense. And so violence does have a place, provided it's retaliatory, because then you are defending your life, your property, and your rights to life. And
you know, I got to say this. In my experience, right? This might be a little controversial. Should I say it? Yeah, what the hell? The people who do that, and WZ, you may not be this kind of person. I ultimately don't know. But the people who talk about the need for violence and you got to use violence, in my experience, they rarely do. Right? I knew a friend of mine in prison, very much known for, I don't know a polite way to say it, stabbing people. That's what he did. He was very much known for it. And he ended up in an argument with somebody one time. And the guy said to him, well, what do you want to do then? You know, meaning you want to fight? And he just looked at him. He said, oh, Mike, I don't fight. And Mike said, okay. and
that
left.
was the end of that.
That was the end of the discussion. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, who the hell wants to get stabbed? My only point is that oftentimes the people that do the most talking about violence don't really want violence, and they shouldn't. We shouldn't want violence,
No.
right? But like you said, sometimes you have to defend yourself, and it becomes a necessity. And the bottom line is the only way any political ideology, ours, communism, libertarianism, whatever, is going to take hold is if you convince enough people. You have to convince enough people. And ultimately, if you convince enough people of the propriety of individual rights, of capitalism, then what you do is you subordinate might to right. You put might and right on the same side. They don't have to be. That's very true. As any dictatorship, as the Soviet Union, Cuba, all demonstrate, that if the ideology is predominantly on the side of initiatory violence, then you lose. That's why it's vital to get people on the side of reason.
Yeah, WZ, don't confuse us with libertarians. Libertarians have embraced pacifism. We are not pacifists by any stretch of the imagination. I think pacifism lacks self-esteem. It denies a truth that some people out there can only be dealt with by violence, and those people are the ones initiating violence against you. You have no other choice, and it's not your problem. They've put you in that position. So I hope that answers your thirst for violence.
Too many session on the tatamis. I don't know what that means, Greg Lewis. You have to clarify. Maybe it's back in the comments. I don't know. Kingsman movie. He's talking about a movie. Okay, this is what happens when you miss some of the comments here. Let me see if we have any more questions. If not, maybe we can get to he said, Greg Lewis says we're here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. All right.
I like that.
So what do you got for us, Mark? What's the next
it seems
story in the queue?
Well, this is sort of old hat because we know that during Trump's first term, he was willing to get the Fed to push interest rates to a negative because he wanted, of course, to stoke the economy and make it appear that it was more prosperous than it really was. And now that his tariff policies are causing a great deal of confusion in the markets and causing confusion around the world economically, and potentially starting to set in some damage that may be very difficult to reverse. He wants the Fed to lower interest rates. Now, of course, lowering interest rates, the Fed's lowering interest rates has a disastrous effect for the rest of us, because it's essentially it's creating artificial demand, stimulating artificial demand for cash, and that gets people spending, and it makes it look like we're prosperous, but we're actually not. The interest rate doesn't reflect the amount of money in the system. It doesn't reflect the amount of risk or capital that's really there. It's just arbitrarily sending bad signals to people who will invest in bad things, which will eventually become the bubbles that burst down the line. Including it also it causes more inflation and creates a greater burden on people with fixed incomes and people who are already struggling as it is with the inflation rate, even though it's down some. So he's trying to pressure Powell, and he's pressured him by implying that he could fire him tomorrow if he wants to. But Powell has pushed back, and I have to say I'm proud of Powell for this. I mean, he's in an enviable position. Who wants to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve, one of the most evil institutions on the planet? I certainly wouldn't want to do it. But he's pushing back and saying, look, any decisions we make with respect to the interest rates are going to be data driven. They're not going to be driven by politics. And that's a tough thing to do against a guy like Trump and against the MAGA movement that seems to be endorsing everything Trump says. For Powell to take a clearly apolitical position on this and actually fight for the American people, which essentially this is. He's saying, I'm going to let the data tell us what we can do, and I'm not going to let you tell me what we can do. You're not the Emperor Trump, you're President Trump, and you are still subject to the will of the people and a servant of the people. So Powell may not have his job for long. I think he's only supposed to be on until May of 2026. And it's entirely possible that a desperate Trump could replace him with a minion who will then do what he wants, which will only drive the debt further. As the big beautiful bill already is driving us further into debt, expect something like lower interest rates or even negative interest rates to cause a real monetary crisis. What say you about that?
I agree with all the economics that you're talking about. I probably would have worded it differently, but that's neither here nor there. But I think what this illustrates is the main problem is the Federal Reserve and having a central bank that's controlled by the decisions of people. That's what's beautiful about the gold standard or any metallic standard. You want to take that out of human decision making as much as you can, because you ultimately will end up with a situation where you have a Trump pressuring this guy, Jerome Powell, who's human. So now, what if he is one of these guys that's very averse to peer pressure, and that plays a role in his decision making, so he doesn't lower interest rates when maybe he should lower interest rates, right? You don't.
Well, you said he's going to be
this.
data driven, so he'll lower interest rates if.
But that's what he says. But yeah, that's what he says. But first of all, his ability to read the data, I'd be very skeptical.
Look,
Milton Friedman, right, I think, made a great point that by the time they try to adjust to the economy, the economy's already adjusting itself, so you end up just causing harm. But
absolutely,
I really just think that the solution to this is to separate the state from the economy, get them out of the money business, allow something akin to what Mises called free banking, gold standard, and let the market handle this stuff so we don't have petty tyrants trying to control us.
Absolutely true. That is the ultimate decision. I think that's the ultimate course we have to take. That would have to be done by constitutional amendment, of course.
Yeah.
We have to get rid of the Federal Reserve. There's no question about it. WZ says something that I simply have to address. The nation is my house. WZ, the nation is not your house. Your house is your house. The nation is not your house. So I just want you to know that. You don't own the nation, my friend. You may get a little bit of a say-so with respect to the laws of the land to the degree that you vote, but you do not own the nation, and you do not have the right to tell other people what to do in the nation. You have the right to tell people what to do in your own home. That's it. Sorry, pal. I just shrunk your sphere of influence down, but it's okay.
I'm glad you addressed it, because I thought he was saying my house is my nation. You understand? I didn't realize what he was saying is that the entire nation is his house.
That's my nation house.
No, you were right, because he then said it is my home. No, it most certainly is not.
So look, the next thing we can talk about is from Axios. Elon Musk's Doge savings dwarfed by deficit ballooning Trump bill. We already know that the estimates that Elon Musk came up with respect to the amount that he was saving the United States citizenry was in the neighborhood of $170 billion, about 1% of what they initially intended. The real figures are going to be around $16 billion. That is a trifle, folks. That's not really saving the American people money at all. And what we have now with the big beautiful bill is a spending bill that, like no other, that is going to add $5 trillion to the debt, in part because it's doing what people want. They want their taxes cut. Unfortunately, we have this ginormous debt that has been driven partly by the American people wanting the parasitic political state to continue to spend money on things they should not be spending money for, or I should say robbing some people for the sake of others. This is not what government should be doing, and they have to deal with entitlements. If they do not deal with entitlements this time around, it ain't going to happen. and we should be very concerned about the future of our economy. If the Republicans with the House and the Senate and the executive cannot get this budget under control, we're in trouble. And that just highlights things that we've been saying for the past couple of years individually, and now on this show, this new show for 43 shows. There's really no difference between the left and the right. They are all, the parasitic political class is the worst class in the world. They drain your capital dry. They take what you have, they take your productive capacity, and they redirect it to political ends to your detriment all the time. And now we're $37 trillion in debt. There's no way they can avoid this. They can stick their heads in the sand. They can play fancy Washington accounting tricks. None of it is going to change the reality that the chickens are going to have to come home to roost this time around. So if Trump can't do it this time around, he's got to go. He's got to go. The Republicans got to go. The Republicans can't be taken seriously as a party anymore of fiscal responsibility. They can't be taken seriously as a party that
Democrats neither. Democrats are terrible too. So where can people turn?
Well, they can turn to the American Capitalist Party, and that means going to AmericanCapitalistParty.org, join up, donate, become a part of the change, folks. The political world is aligned against you. Now, we have been responsible for that, not we as an objectivist, because we haven't. We're fighting the trend. But most people have been allowing this statism to slowly creep into their lives, rob them of their moral agency and their hard-earned wealth in order to pay for this altruistic, collectivistic state that has now become out of control. It's time to slay the monster, folks. And you can only slay the monster with solid principles and people that speak their mind. They don't try to package things nicely. They say it like it is. That would be the American Capitalist Party.
We have a commenter who says, poor Elon Musk was handcuffed, held back from the cutting he would have really liked to do. Well, my problem with that is he said he could identify 2 trillion in cuts, and he didn't. So I don't know.
Do you think part of that was because Trump noticed that he was starting to go in there with a chainsaw, like Milei did in Argentina, and he felt political pushback, and then he said, "Don't do the chainsaw, do a scalpel." Do you think that sort of directed?
Well, here's the inherent problem is I don't know, and there's no way I can know. All I have are the empirical facts in front of me, right? And the guy said he would find 2 trillion, and then he came up ultimately with what, 176 billion.
Did he think he was including entitlements in that 2 trillion at first?
I don't know, and that's the thing. But he didn't do. I think that he actually if I'm not mistaken, and somebody in the audience here, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he said it was a waste, fraud, and abuse, that he was going to find all these savings in waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah, let's not forget that it was the Department of Government Efficiency. So it wasn't about eliminating government from the lives of the people other than as a protective mechanism. It was about making government doing the wrong things that it does, the extra constitutional things it does, more efficient. And I think that's a frightening thing. Hey, wait, I just want to, WZ keeps coming up here in the comments. He says, I really just have a problem with how capitalism is enabling mass migration. It's leading to ethnic replacement. Okay, this is first of all, we as capitalists are for full immigration, by the way, full and free immigration, because we think it's an individual right to be able to move from a worse place to a better place, provided there are no state mechanisms that are propping those people up and giving them extra privileges, and they have to work for a living and earn their own way. The American dream is open to everyone. But it hasn't been capitalism that has been bringing these people in. It was a statist with a particular desire I think, to overturn certain demographics. I can't speak for Biden's thinking, but it certainly had nothing to do with capitalism, because there's nothing in Biden's resume that makes him a capitalist. Now, who the fuck cares about ethnic replacement? Ethnicity is nothing. What matters are ideas. And I have spoken to people around the world, my friend. I've been around the world. WZ, if you haven't been around the world, I suggest you travel a bit. And I have found more American people in North Africa and in Ireland and in Portugal and all places around the world who are not technically ethnically white, who are more American in their values, more American in their outlook, meaning they believe that the American dream can be achieved by leaving people alone to be free, and the government should leave people alone to be free to achieve their values, than I have in the United States of America. I mean, just look at the kids who were born here, raised here, and are now protesting in Columbia University and Harvard University. These are American citizens, folks, who hate the West and hate America, and they're white. So I could care less about ethnicity, my friend, and I think you should care less about it as well.
All right. I'll give the capitalist thought of the day. I think it's my turn.
Do it.
I am vehemently opposed to reparations for descendants of slaves. The reason I vehemently oppose reparations is because I do not think that people who were not slaves are owed money from people who never owned slaves. I do not think that my ethnicity, my nationality bears anything on who I am today and what I deserve. What my ancestors did, for good or bad, means nothing. So when WZ says in the comments that his ancestors built this civilization, first of all, I doubt it. Secondly, who cares? What does that have to do with you? If you, WZ, are to benefit because of your ancestors' contributions, then why don't you, WZ, owe the descendants of slaves money for what their ancestors endured in this country? You can't have it both ways. Why not just be individuals and judge individuals based on their character and not whom they happen to be related to? And with that,
amen. Amen to that. I want to say Mozart was a white guy, and I am not. My moral stature does not increase one whit by the fact that we share the same ethnicity. So, WZ, get off this ethno trip, man, and get into individualism, because individualism doesn't regard ethnicity as anything within the control of the human mind, and since it's not a volitional part of our volitional faculty, it is not moral. It's not worth moral judgment. We don't consider it anything. As Martin Luther King said, your character, however, is another thing. You are a self-made man, and that's what I judge you by. So stay tuned, WZ, because we're going to change your mind if you stick around long enough. Well, Michael, I think that's it. That was a great capitalist thought for the day.
and I think you're late for the reality show.
I am. Individualism is the antidote to collectivism. It's the antidote to racism. It's the antidote to all those isms that you want out of the world. Please remember to hit the like button before you leave, and join us on Monday, same time, same place, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. And until that time, folks, always remember, especially you, WZ, to check your premises. Peace.